one nation,
indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
President Schultz,
Present.
Secretary Treasurer Horowitz.
here,
Trustee Warner is absent. Trustee Pell.
Present.
Trustee Welker.
Here.
We have a quorum present this afternoon.
Okay, very good. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the Shinnecock Bay Shellfish Restoration Project, updates, SOAR initiative, and updates on Sag Pond and Mill Creek water quality monitoring by Dr. Gobler. So is he available to talk?
Yes.
all right.
He's coming in now.
Okay, hi, Chris.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Chris.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good.
If it's okay, I have a PowerPoint, some slides to help me make some of the important points here. Is that
Sure.
You can
work for
share.
you guys?
You can share.
Great. Okay, so let me get that in the way. I'm really going to focus largely, at least for starters, on shellfish restoration. Let's just see here. Make sure. Here we go. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Shinnecock Bay restoration, and my colleague Mike Dole is well, he's listening in, I can say. I thought he'd be able to zoom in also for the presentation, but that's fine. So just as a quick reminder, you know, Eric, I'm sure you recall
He's
when
here
you
if
were.
you want him in.
Yeah, I think just in case, if you can have him be
He's
present.
coming in now.
Yeah, that's great. Eric, just as a reminder, you'll recall when you're in your first go around with the trustees towards the end, you had designated Stony Brook as the entity in charge of shellfish restoration programs for Shinnecock Bay.
Right.
And since that time, we've had a great partnership. Shinnecock Bay Restoration Programs began in 2012, and we've really worked throughout the entire bay. Just pointing out here some of the places we've worked on: clam restoration, oyster restoration, seagrass restoration, and of course monitoring really throughout the bay. On the hard clam front, we've been focused on hard clam spawner sanctuaries. We're planting hard clams into the bay. And then from there, hoping that they're going to spawn and create these larvae that will then become juveniles, as you can see here, and then repopulate the bay. And, you know, it's hard to believe it was 8 years ago when I came to the trustees with the idea of creating these hard clam spawner sanctuaries. You'll recall we met with the South End of Town Baymen's Association, and they approved that. And actually, they've been really good in helping us make sure these areas are staying not poached and actually remaining as such. And since that time, we've planted over 3.2 million clams in 64 different locations, both within the Weesuck Creek site and also within the Tiana Bay site. And you can see here how those populations have grown through the years. It's largely been on the backs of my lab group, but we've also gotten different Southampton schools in the town of Southampton, schools like East Quogue, West Hampton, East Port, South Manor, and Hampton Bays, getting on the vessels and helping us with this work as well. And we're monitoring all this also. This here just shows you that these clams are surviving. This line is where the stocking densities of the clams. And you can see year by year, we're not really seeing the numbers change. If they were dying off, we'd see this be going down, but instead they're staying right about where they should be. Now, one of the reasons we chose these sites is because of the water circulation within Shinnecock Bay. These two heat maps here show where we expect the larvae to be transported from Weesuck Creek. You can see it goes to both to the east and to the west, but certainly making it to eastern Shinnecock Bay. And then the Tiana Bay site, you can see the large majority of the clams actually end up going to eastern Shinnecock Bay. We've been monitoring these locations, you know, since we began, and what we've essentially seen since we began our work. And I should just say, we started doing this in 2012, but a small clam that would have been born in 2012, as an example, wouldn't grow up to harvestable size or measurable size till 2015. So a lot of times we're looking at that date onward. You'll see more of that shortly. But when we look at what the clam population looked like in 2015, this is sort of just a map. Each circle shows you where we're seeing the clams. Compared to what we're seeing today, you can see the population, particularly in the east, is tremendously more dense than when we began. You can see hardly anything just 5 years ago, and now highly abundant clam densities. And you can see here, these are juvenile clams, I should mention, and you can see here how the numbers have just gone way up since we began our monitoring. I mean, this is orders of magnitude increases in hard clams. And we're also seeing that when we look at not just the juveniles, but all the different size classes that's shown here, if you compare, again, that 2015 in the east to what it looked like when we started, mainly chowders, a little bit of the fewer things. But what we see today is that actually there's just been a small increase in the large clams. Most of that increase is in the small clams, the juvenile size and smaller. And probably the most important thing that's occurred here is with regards to landings. And I'm sure you're aware of this, but let me show you numbers that continue to astonish me. These are the New York State DEC reported hard clam landings for Shinnecock Bay since we began our program. Again, we started in 2012, and you can see since that time, things really took off. And I want you to note this inflection point from 2015. We know that in these first few years, these clams that were being harvested, there's no way they came from our spawner sanctuaries. But look, once we got to the point where they could have come from there, you can see this enormous trajectory. This is a 700% increase in the landings of hard clams in Shinnecock Bay. And Mike Dole, who is on the call with us here, got this data from the DEC. He also managed to get the size distribution of the different clams. And what you can see is that the increases are very much largely in the little neck size class. And again, those are the exact kind of clams that our spawner sanctuaries would have yielded. And when we put this in a longer time perspective, going back to 1986, what you can see is that the landings in Shinnecock Bay in the last 2 years are greater than any year going back all the way to 1986. So this is really unprecedented and historical, to the point where the landings now in Shinnecock Bay are exceeding Great South Bay, despite the fact that that bay, Shinnecock Bay, is 1/10 the size of Shinnecock Bay. I'll also just now pivot briefly to oyster restoration. You'll also recall that constructing oyster reefs was part of this project as well. I'm sure you all know oysters naturally exist as reefs where they aggregate communally on top of each other and grow up over time. When New York was first settled by Western settlers in the 1600s, they found oyster reefs all over New York. Of course, we know those are largely extinct now, so we're working on bringing those back. Since 2017, and I'll really just credit Mike Dole to this amazing work, he has constructed 4 different oyster reefs, 2 in the Quag Canal and 2 in the western part of Shinnecock Bay. We call this these sedge reefs. They're just north and west of Dockers. This is done by getting shell that's aged and cured for more than 6 months, cleaned, put into bags. The bags of shell are then put into tanks. We then spawn oysters. Those oysters settle, the juvenile spats settle on those bags, which are then put into the field to construct our oyster reef. And as you can see here, the reefs are largely living oysters on the outside, with the inside filled with shell, and then also some loose live oysters. You can see that here. The permits that we got from the DEC that we literally worked 5 years to get, those permits allow us to build reefs that are 5 meters wide by 10 meters long. And just showing an overview here, the image I showed before was an aerial shot. Here you can see that reef, someone monitoring it there in the Quag Canal. The second reef doesn't quite have that shape. It's a series of shell bags with the same number. And here you can see when we constructed each of those reefs and when we started, how small those oysters were. They all started with spat-on shell. You can see just a few millimeters in size. And you can see in total, millions of oysters being planted there. In addition to the spat-on shell, which again is in the number in more than 1 million, 2.4 million to be precise total, we also have put some adult oysters out on these as well. I'm going to show you now is a video that Mike took just last week when the weather was still good. Let's see if we can get it showing here. What you're seeing, this is what the oyster reefs look like. And this is what these oysters are only 2 years old. 2 years ago, they were spat, literally millimeters in size. Many of these oysters are 6 up to 8 inches long, all growing up well and filtering the water. You can see here, it's an entire community. So it's not just the oysters, but we're seeing the oyster reefs colonized by things like seaweeds and sponges. So they're providing important filtration habitat, but they're also providing important filtration, but also important aquatic habitat. And so this just shows you again, here's another video during summer when there's more of the seaweeds there. Here's right next to it. So here's what the bottom normally looks like. There's nothing out there. You can see here, this is contrast with a thriving, living oyster reef right next to it. We see mainly 2 types of different seaweeds growing on this particular region. I won't get into the weeds on it, so to speak. But these seaweeds do provide what we call buffering capacity to improve the pH and the oxygen in the water regionally. In addition, as far as habitat goes, these 2 plots here show the density and the biomass of things that we're finding on the reef in the blue compared to the control site. So high biomass of things like shrimp and crabs. This is just some data, again, breaking out now different invertebrates that we've seen out there. You can see multiple species of crabs, snails, oyster drills, polychaetes, shrimp. And beyond that, we're also seeing fish using the reefs as habitat. So on a control site, you can see just 3 species here, but you can see the great diversity of different fish species, including oyster toadfish. That's what oyster toadfish are supposed to do, living in and amongst our reefs. Now, of course, one of the major motivations for this entire project is to combat things like harmful algal blooms. And here you can see this is Great South Bay, but same fate for Shinnecock Bay, these massive brown tide blooms that we know when you apply the right number of shellfish can be controlled by benthic, or we call shellfish filtration. And if we look at the bay here, and we consider that the eastern part of the bay is filtered, flushed out strongly by the tides, and if we consider, and as well as the abundant clam population, and we consider our clam sanctuaries where we know, actually, we've done the math, these are under control by the shellfish. And then we add in the oysters, we now have significant filtration going on within Shinnecock Bay. And when we look at what's been happening with brown tides in Shinnecock Bay, the results are equally astonishing. What you can see here in our first year, brown tides across multiple sites, reaching between 1 and 2 million cells per milliliter. As we stocked the clams, populations went down. We did have a year in 2016 that was particularly warm in the spring. We know that sets up for a brown tide, so we did get a bloom again, but you'll note, less intense than in the past. And actually, you can see after that, a little bloom in 2017, and I don't even have 2020 in here, but I can tell you, we just had the first 3-year period in the history of Shinnecock Bay going all the way back to when brown tide started in 1985, the first time there was 3 years in a row without a brown tide in Western Shinnecock Bay. So we think that the results that we're getting from this program have been tremendous, but we're not done. So I just want to update you on 2 things that we're further working on. You'll of course recall in 2017, Governor Cuomo began and announced his Long Island Shellfish Restoration Program, an investment of more than $10 million in restoring shellfish across multiple locations. You'll also probably recall that started with him making a trip out to the Stony Brook Southampton Marine Station. We brought him out on our boat and showed him everything that the Shinnecock Bay Restoration Program was up to and the success we were having. I spent the summer working with the staff and developing what became known as the Long Island Shellfish Restoration Program that was announced in September 2017. And as part of that program, working with the staff, I convinced them that it was important to even expand what was going on in Shinnecock Bay, making it one of 5 locations that the program put together for planting shellfish. You'll recall that after that time, in consultation again with the baymen and the trustees, the sanctuary sites for Weesuck Creek were expanded. So the Tiana Bay restoration site, excuse me, water sanctuary site is unchanged. The Weesuck Creek site that had just gone straight across, the baymen had been requested whether they'd consider having the whole, this site be expanded. They agreed. So it now encompasses the northern region of the very western extreme here. And there's also a small site here for Smith Creek. So you probably know the DEC runs this program, and I'm sure you also know that there's a very long legal back and forth with regards to getting on the same page for this happening in Shinnecock Bay. But the legal agreements were all signed up and passed. And so we began planting clams as part of the Long Island Shellfish Restoration Program in Shinnecock Bay this year, just last month. And that marks the end of what we're doing for 2020. But we're in total going to be adding 1.5 million additional adult hard clams. And we were hoping to actually do those, all of that planning next year in 2021. And here's just a photograph of some of our people from our lab working there. There's Mike Dole. You might not recognize him with the mask on. And this is on the RV Peconic, which is well equipped for putting out up to 30,000 or 40,000 adult hard clams at a time. The final thing I want to discuss is an additional new opportunity for Shinnecock Bay. You may have seen in the news, or you may be aware that recently the Pew Charitable Trust got together with the Nature Conservancy to start a new program that they're calling SOAR, Supporting Oyster Aquaculture and Restoration. And the idea is, I think, multifold, but the idea is that aquaculturists, firstly in this pandemic, economically may be having a hard time. And secondly, sometimes produce oysters that get big and craggly and maybe are not the type of thing that would be sold on the market. So the goal of this program is to purchase oysters from aquaculturists and then redeploy those oysters for the purposes of restoration in locations. Really, this is for the entire east coast of the US, or at least the North Atlantic, the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic region. And so in discussions for New York State, Stony Brook's been part of those discussions. And again, we argued that we think Shinnecock Bay is a great location for these oysters. And so, one of the things that I'm hoping will be an outcome of this presentation is to both introduce you to this program and hopefully make the Southampton Town trustees partners here as well. Obviously, you'll have final say as to whether this is a go or a no-go. But for all of New York, SOAR is purchasing 600,000 adult oysters. We've proposed to the Pew and Nature Conservancy that 250,000 of those adult oysters could go into Western Shinnecock Bay, both on our existing oyster reefs and perhaps some nearby locations. We will be the entity charged with planting and monitoring these oysters. And I'll mention that these are New York oysters. Before they go in, we insisted, and we'll be working with Bassem Alam at Stony Brook University, that they are disease tested to make sure we're not introducing any diseases that we're unexpectedly to the region. And before they go out, the oysters will be tumbled and then brine dip to remove any potential predators or other organisms that might be on them. So as far as the restoration goes, that's really the main updates I wanted to share. I've gone a little over in my time, but I'd be happy to, 1, answer questions, 2, talk about mill pond or sag pond, and 3, of course, again, I'm hoping the trustees will partner on the SOAR program for the oyster transplants. And so I would like to figure out how we can, what you think of the program, and if it's something you're interested in, how we would proceed to make sure the trustees are full partners in that program.
Mhm. Well, that's great news on the numbers of clam landings. So we've heard some reports, but we haven't seen the actual numbers yet. So that's great news. Great news.
And again, I'll emphasize those numbers are independent. So that's the DEC collecting the numbers and then reporting it back, and just Mike collecting those. So yeah, it's really a great success story.
Well, we had a similar instance, in Mauritius Bay years ago, where there was a closure line because of the duck farms. And it was basically down longitudinally along the bay. Yep. And it was an immense body of clams in there. The DEC, when they deemed that was that they could dig the clams out of there, when those clams were harvested, the numbers afterwards plummeted in the bay. So that's basically what we're doing now, though, is we're mirroring that situation in Shinnecock now. We're taking the northern part of the bay and establishing this as the spawner for the south side.
100%. And Eric, I just want to emphasize that, just want to say, actually, that whole concept that you just explained, you explained to me 10 years ago. And that was the exact blueprint as to why when we designed where we're going to put these, that's why you mentioning that gave us the idea for using those northern regions. And it's seemingly that's exactly what's happening.
Well, I'm glad to see it worked out. We had done some experiments with Cornell last year. They had a sled with some jets, with water jets, and we put some seed down. We took 2 boats and we dragged it along and basically like rototilled the bottom, and then we seeded right into it, and we're waiting to see. We have it all GPS, and we're waiting to see what the numbers are going to be. So if we now put some of these, we increase the level of clams in the bay, and then we manipulate the bottom a little bit better, to aerate everything up, it might enhance it even more, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Because I remember you showing some details about how the clams were, as they move up and down, they were actually turning the bottom over a little bit. So maybe this would help them out. And we know that when an inlet breaks through and it makes nice new sandy bottom there, that is a tremendous recruitment there.
Yeah, no, I think it could be good for new recruits, but yeah, I think once the clams are, the one thing I will say is once the clams are established, I don't think you'd want to do that because.
No, I meant the southern portion of the bay.
Yeah.
Not the clam sanctuaries.
Could work.
We should try it out. Now the SOAR program, what size are you deeming as adult oysters?
Mike, do you want to unmute? And Mike's more familiar with the. I should say Mike was an oyster grower for 10 years, so he's really an expert.
Yeah, the SOAR program is looking to buy oysters from farmers that were unable to sell the oysters during the pandemic with all the restaurants closing. So the oysters themselves are, for the most part, about 4 inches or bigger.
Oh, okay.
Once they get about 4 inches, they become kind of undesirable for a lot of restaurants. So now a lot of oyster farmers are stuck with a lot of oysters that they can't sell when restaurants are open because they're too big. So the SOAR program is basically buying the big ones.
Okay. Good. Sounds like a win-win then.
Yeah, we think so. We think it's, yeah, for sure.
It's my understanding that 90% of the oysters grown by oyster growers are purchased by restaurants. So the oyster growers have been significantly impacted by COVID-19 shutdown of restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
I think SOAR would be a definite win-win. And
Definitely,
grateful
right.
to Pew Charitable Trust and TNC and Stony Brook
Mhm.
for this. Segueing into using oysters to segue into, could you speak a bit, Dr. Gobler, about Sag Pond and the oysters that were placed in Sag Pond this summer?
Sure, I'll start. I'll let Mike fill in any details I miss. So yeah, we've been doing work in Sag Pond. I'd call it at this point, a public-private partnership, because that started via, all of our work so far has been via private funds from homeowners in the region, where we've done really a whole ecosystem analysis and characterization, looking at water quality, nutrient loading, different types of bacteria, and potential mitigation approaches for mitigating specifically things like blue-green algae blooms, which are a serious threat in that ecosystem. But the final part of the project was to actually look at the feasibility of growing oysters in Sag Pond. And as perspective, we all know, of course, the other temporarily open estuary in the town of Southampton, Mecox Bay, is a wonderful habitat for oysters. 2 years prior, Mike and I had begun work in Georgica Pond, yet another temporary open estuary, and the oysters that were growing there experimentally did very, very well. And so all signs pointed to the potential for oysters to do well in Sag Pond also, and to be sort of another leg in the stool of creating, or the chair of restoration. So I'll say a couple of things, and I'll let Mike fill in any details. We put out oysters at 2 locations in Sag Pond, one by the bridge and one in the more southern extent. The one by the bridge was prone to chronic monkey business by people from the public going in and wanting to see what was there. And I think every time Mike went there, they found the cage was pulled out. So those didn't do well, but not for ecological purposes. So we really mainly stuck with the site to the south. Now, the one thing that did happen is that earlier in the summer, we put the oysters out, a blue-green algae bloom took off, and actually the oysters died. And so that was our first go around, was not successful. After the blue-green algae bloom, I know we put out more oysters. The cut was open, the blue-green algae bloom went away. And to my knowledge, I think the oysters did, well, they didn't die. So we're still working up the data. But we've learned, if we've learned 2 things so far, it's that you're gonna put oysters out, don't put them where they can be publicly accessed, and also avoid blue-green algae blooms. Mike, I'm probably missing a lot of important details that maybe you want to fill in parts that I've missed.
Yes, excuse me for 1 second, though. Hold on 1 second. My dog is barking.
Well, anyway, the other parts of the project have been figuring out where the nitrogen loads come from, and that also is very interesting in that it wasn't all wastewater there. There was also a significant agricultural component. So the solutions on the nitrogen front there will be not uniform, but multi-pronged, being both wastewater and fertilizer. But back to Mike on the oyster front.
Yeah, I think it's important to add, we set up identical experiments in 3 different systems. Chris mentioned Georgica Pond, which also has this transient inlet that gets open and closed twice a year. And we also put oysters in Conscience Bay on the North Shore in a more typical embayment with the inlet that's always open and a higher salinity. That first time we put oysters in Sag, we had mortality very quickly at both sites, the bridge site and the south site. And that was before the monkey business at the bridge site. So something was going on. Chris mentioned the blue-green algae bloom. The salinity was also low because this was before the inlet was open. But the salinity was similar to what existed in Georgica Pond at the time. And the oysters did fine in Georgica Pond. So there was something more than just a low salinity issue. And and then as Chris mentioned, we put a second round of oysters after the inlet was open. survivorship was definitely higher, but it was still lower than our other sites. So, which is indicative of definitely some water quality issues in Sag Pond.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
guess I'll just add that, at this point, we're working up all of our data for Sag Pond, and we're gonna, and looking to write up sort of a report with regards to everything we found. And from that report, based on all the findings, things like what's promoting the blue-green algae blooms, what are the sources of the nutrients promoting the blue-green algae blooms, what are the sources of the pathogenic bacteria in there, how are the oysters doing? That will then set the stage for the development of a management plan so that any actions taken to improve the pond will be based on the current conditions and the data, essentially, so that any money spent for mitigation will only be focused on the things that are most likely to be effective.
Chris, would you mind speaking just a bit about Mill Creek, the buoy that was placed in Mill Creek as well, and your results to this point?
Sure. Yeah. So we had a buoy in Mill Creek, but also in Mill Pond. So we're sort of looking at the coupling of the two. And I'd say the biggest takeaway so far is that in the last 2 years, the blue-green algae blooms in that system have been significantly lower than they had been in the past. So we're still seeing blue-green algae, but not the intensity and not the levels of toxins that we had seen in the past. So there's definitely improvement. And that focus of that study in particular is to understand both the blue-green algae and also any effects they might be having on the resident shellfish populations.
Oh, great job so far. The SOAR program, when do you expect to deploy these oysters? Do you have any timetable for that?
Well, I know that Pew and TNC are very eager. They'd even like to see it happen before the end of the year. There's still some logistics to be worked out. But, if it sounds like a win-win to you all, I think, it'd be great to have something in writing, maybe a letter of approval from the trustee, so that when the other aspects are worked out, we're able to act on the opportunity.
Have you put oysters in any other water bodies yet as part of SOAR in New York?
No, we would be we would be the first group to do it. There are other places and organizations looking to be involved as well, but in a call last month, they really did identify the work we're doing in Shinnecock Bay as probably ideal because the history we have there and that we're supported to continue the monitoring. For example, Cornell had been part of the Long Island Shellfish Restoration Program, but their funding's done. And so now all the monitoring for that whole program now falls to Stony Brook. And so that's one of the reasons they felt that Stony Brook was the right organization and that Shinnecock Bay was the right location.
Mm-hmm.
But just in case there were any questions about SOAR, they have implemented this program in other states. I believe in Maine or in New Hampshire, they've already deployed the program, right? So it's not as if we would be the first.
Correct.
Okay. So they have a track record. Do you have any literature that they produced on some of these projects?
There's a really good website.
Oh, okay.
There's also been a lot of media attention that they garnered, and I know they had an appearance on a couple of weeks ago on the Today Show. But if you do a Google search for the SOAR program, and I think you're right, it's New Hampshire, I think, is one of the first states where they planted. So if you did a Google search, you'll find a lot of media about it.
Okay.
I can share it with you, Eric. I took a look.
Okay, cool.
I have a question for you. Are you aiming to put it in the oysters in a closed area or in an open area?
So right now, the primary site we're thinking about is near our current oyster reefs. That area is currently open, but we're also considering having what we'd like to ideally do is have some of them there, but then also another set that would be in a second region not on the oyster reefs for comparative purposes. We can see where they do better. The site we had been thinking about there is the Quad Canal, and I believe that is closed. Although if anybody knows better, they can correct me.
Mhm.
And the
That being-
the
Go ahead.
DEC is gonna let you put that size oysters in a closed area?
Yes, it's a good question, Bill, and I will just say that through, when we began our Shinnecock Bay Restoration Program, the DEC restricted any plantings and restoration work in closed areas because they didn't want people poaching and then getting sick. However, with the Long Island Shellfish Restoration Program, they've actually reversed that decision. And so now for the Long Island Shellfish Restoration Program, actually nearly all of the plantings are actually happening in closed regions. So anyway, I think we'd have either opportunity or
Okay.
option, I should say.
I just want to add that, like you said, the details are still being worked out, but I think, unlike the Long Island Shellfish Restoration Program, I think for this SOAR program with these oysters, DEC is going to require certified waters, which the reef areas are. And that's one reason the DEC is encouraging or would approve them being planted in as part of the SHRP project.
Okay. So I think it was indicated to us that it would be better to move sooner than later, because there's other areas that are identified on Long Island. So it would be best to get in the front of the line.
I think so. That's my feeling.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
So-
Shinnecock Bay has been a terrific collaboration among all the stakeholders and you folks as well. And even like you pointed to earlier with the legal teams to get everything to work out. So I think we should maximize whatever it is that we can do.
Yep.
Get the benefits.
Agreed.
So let's set up a phone conference and figure out what you need as far as documentation and so I can present it to the board too about getting a letter up. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the main thing, is just a letter that would say that, you're a letter of permission, really.
Right. We just have to identify, if you can, the areas.
Okay.
On a map.
Yep.
Okay.
So what I'll do is Mike and I will square that away with the DEC. We're pretty close, but we just need need to wrap that up. And then when we have that, we can
Right.
send a map and a narrative.
Right. Well, I just think that, the trustees are extremely lucky that we have such a valuable resource as having your university at our disposal and to do all this research. It's fantastic. All this information at our fingertips.
Yeah.
Great working relationship.
But,
Yeah.
likewise, some of the stuff we proposed early on was a little bit of roll of the dice. And I think, the trustees being open to trying different things has really paid off. And I really, the other thing, Mike says this all the time, so I'm going to steal Mike's line, that this is a great example of where an environmental initiative can have a very significant economic benefit. Right. So all those baymen now are making, wasn't our intention necessarily, but in fact, not only do we have more filtration, but at the same time, there's actually more work for baymen out on the bays,
Right.
which is obviously great.
But what a lot of people don't realize too, and maybe you can elaborate on this, is that the oysters are great for filtering, but you have to harvest them to get the nitrogen out, right? By leaving them in for a long period of time, if they die, the nitrogen is going to go back into the water column, right? To a certain extent.
To a certain extent, but there is this process called denitrification, which seems to be pretty active on oyster reefs and in the clam sanctuaries also. So it's sort of, it's the bivalves getting an assist from the bacteria, where they essentially the nitrogen is converted into nitrogen gas. Not all of it, but a decent amount that helps is a second pass for the nitrogen getting out.
Okay. Cool.
That's the calcium from the shells too.
Yes, that's right. The calcium carbonate. Yep, that pulls in. Good point. Yes, I agree. That's
Maybe give me a
significant.
job.
Yeah, and then certainly keeping the shell in the bay is important. as you all know.
Bill knows oysters.
Has the acidity level changed in the bay since the proliferation of the clams?
So, I can't say bay-wide it has significantly, but we have done some work looking at how shell can reduce the acidity of sediments.
Mhm.
And in turn, how that can lead to more recruitment of more shellfish.
Mhm. Okay, great. So we'll be in touch. Get this thing rolling, right?
Yeah, so on our end, we will produce a map of where we want to put them, and then details of how they'll be put out. And then, we'll send that on. And again, I think the DEC is looking for a letter of approval. So, if you're able to
Okay.
do that based on that information, that would be wonderful.
Great.
Thank you, Chris. Thank
Thanks
you,
for
Mike.
coming in.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, Chris,
Thank you.
before you go, Chris, we were talking the last couple of weeks about the concern for the quantity of bunker up there.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, good. And I know that Scott and all, you worked hard to get assistance both from the DEC, who then got help from Pennsylvania to up the quota and the limit for bunker harvesting in New York.
Yeah, the guys were working hard.
Yeah, and I know that resulted in those bunker that were getting trapped in the river getting moved out, which may have averted a major disaster.
It looks like at this point, with temperatures dropping and the schools kind of thinned out, hopefully we have, because we didn't really need another public health issue on top of the pandemic. We got enough problems.
Right. Agreed. No, I'm glad that came together as well.
Okay,
Thanks.
great. Thanks for the
Okay.
presentation, Chris.
Good to see
Thanks,
you
Chris.
all.
Yep, and Mike.
Thank you. You
Thanks a
too.
lot.
Bye, Mike.
Bye.
Okay, see Jessica is there assisting Lisa. The next item are waterfowl hunting location permit applications for determination.
I am here. How is everybody doing today?
Okay,
Hey,
good.
Jess, how are you?
Mrs. Feldman.
Good. Hi, guys. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Feldman.
Yes.
So the first thing on the agenda in terms of waterfowl is going to be Edward Bunch. This was a new, we're gonna go with Eric's first. So this
Right.
was a new application for a proposed location, no permit number. This was recommended by the Bay Constables to be denied. I'll show you the location on the map. It's in the Peconic River. And the reason for denial is, Rich said, we're currently going to deny this application because we currently have a registered location, number 272, in the same location or close proximity to it.
Mhm. Right. That's
So
near Iron Point.
that's a denial. So
Okay,
what would you guys like to do? Advance that denial?
yes, I would like to advance it
I agree with Eric.
under the recommendation of the Bay Constable.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Donald Bennett Jr., permit number 20, the addition of co-permitting the third. This one is pretty routine. Donald Bennett the third is his son, and he had all of the documents, proof of residency, hunting license, and he just wanted to, add his son onto the blind with him. And
Okay.
the Bay Constables.
All right, we can move that.
Okay, similar for Donald Bennett, permit number 27. He's also at the third, who is his grandson as a co-permittee. So that would max Donald Bennett the third out at his 2 locations as a co-permittee.
Okay, I'll move that forward.
Okay, so those are both advancing.
The next one, Jeremy Eastwood, we're going to table that one.
Okay, so we're gonna hold this one. And that's
Okay.
that for
Yeah, Scott's next.
I'm next.
Moving on. Robert Fossum, permit number Edwin Shuttleworth. Edwin is currently registered on one other blind, so this will be his second. And the Bay Constable said everything looks good to.
The Bay Constable's good, I'm good.
Okay.
And then the next one, Robert Bossung and Edwin Shuttleworth, permit number 51, transfer permit application to Andrew McCavanagh. Andrew McCavanagh is not on any other blinds and is not on the waterfowl wait list. They said good to go.
Okay,
Okay.
let it go.
Lastly, for Scott is going to be Charles E. Miller Sr. and E. Miller Jr., permit number 69. The son is removing Senior. He's been in Florida due to COVID, and he said he may want to add his father back at some time in the future, but at this time, due to COVID, he's not able to be in the area, so he's just going to be on the blind by himself going forward for now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Next one is for Ed, is James P. Capper's permit, late renewal. We're gonna table that.
I thought, are you tabling that one, or are you
Yeah,
just telling me? It was
tabling it.
okay? He's tabling it.
Tabling it.
Okay, we're going to hold that one over.
Yep.
The next one is going to be Bill's area, Richard White, permit number 203. This man was approved from the waterfowl wait list. The location is southeast corner of North Sea Harbor. It was a previous location, and it was, revoked last year. It was John Ventarella's location in the past, and
Can you just hold up the map for that so people would know where it is in that area?
yeah, I certainly can. Let me
Please.
just find it.
Thanks so much.
problem. No problem. Can you guys see that? This is North Sea Harbor.
Yes. Right where the yellow is.
Yes.
That's good. People have an idea where it is.
Yes. So you want to advance that one, Bill?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The next three, I like the table for, wait for a letter,
Eddie Aduck? Edward
Yeah.
Aduck? Okay,
2000, 212, 215, and 216.
okay. We'll hold those until we get a letter of explanation.
Yes.
Okay. And the last one, Bill, Travis Muller.
We're going to table that way and wait for a revise from the Bay Constable on this site.
Okay, a revised recommendation from the Bay Constables.
Yes, because I
Holding
spoke,
that.
we talked about it and there's some problems with it.
Okay. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great
Thanks,
night.
Jess. You
Thank
too.
you.
you.
You always do such an
Jess.
outstanding job, Jess.
Thank you.
You want me to bring these down on the
I
plate?
got it. Thank you. Tomorrow.
What are you doing? Need you. Come on, come on.
You need to unmute.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was on mute there for a second. The next item on the agenda is Fisher Organization, which is at
Come on.
address, the exact address.
326 Royal Avenue.
Yeah, 326 Royal Avenue. This is across the street from the Dabowski application that we have with the rocks. It's a two-story white house. It's in bad shape. As I recall, they had done some, removed some wetlands down there. So what they're doing is they're making an application for a 45-foot extension to existing bulkhead with a 20-foot return on the west side of the site at the end of Royal Avenue. It's 65 feet total, 75 cubic yards of fill to backfill it. And they want a 5-foot wide timber walkway proposed landward of the bulkhead. That's that section there. You want to bring that plan up?
Yeah.
So everybody, okay.
Hey, Eric, are they replacing or they adding
No,
on?
what's happened is that since with the sea level rise, you can see where the high water mark is there, where it says Royal Avenue. You can see where the high water mark is, and it's coming up, and it's creating a washout there, and they want to basically extend the permit up the bulkhead up the road to prevent the land from sloughing off into the road all the time.
You can see it on the aerial here. It's washing
You
around.
see how it's washed out in that big semicircle there?
Yes.
Because it's hitting the road, and then it's creating a swirling action, and it's sucking the sand out, and then it's filling up the end of the road there.
Would rocks be better?
No, I think a bulkhead in that area is better. Yeah, because it has to be retained. There's a lot of wave action coming directly at that, and it probably would splash over, and then all the sand would filter out anyway. Everyone in the neighborhood's fine with it. They've been trying to actually get the person who owned the house to do this for years, and he finally sold it to this other gentleman, and then they want to actually do the project now.
Is there any possibility that with that increase in the length of the bulkhead and the rocks that have been installed on the western property, that there's going to be reflection of the waves from that extension to the bulkhead onto the rocks and further erode that section of beach?
I don't think so with the prevailing winds. I just don't think that rocks are appropriate in this position, this particular area. Due to the slope that's there, that's actually very high. The piece of property is perched very high up there. Whereas Devassi on the other side is not as high. This was a built-up piece of property. It sits very high.
Could they vegetate then behind that, or ideally instead of that extension to the bulkhead? Would that be helpful?
What, vegetation to absorb the wave energy there that much?
Yes.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. The tremendous amount of the water comes way up the road there. It comes up about 2 properties up on a high tide a lot of times. So it's continually beaten up against this particular area here.
I just wonder though, if by extending that bulkhead, if it's going to just move the problem. That's all.
I don't think so. I think it's just going to solve the problem of all that sand coming down into the bay. I don't know. What's the rest of the board think? You want to put rocks in, or you want to put have them, or you want to have a schedule a site visit to take a look at it and see if rocks are appropriate? Everybody want to take a look at it?
Go back to that. Can you zoom in on it a little bit there, James?
That's it, all I can go in.
That's all you can go?
Yep.
We could take a look at it in some kind of weather.
Okay.
Would be good.
Okay.
That was okay with you.
Yep. Oh.
Eric, I'm fine with you. You have a lot of years of experience, so you know what's going on.
Yeah,
Well, we'll let Ann take a look at it. How's that? It's not a critical situation. What happened also is that, well, there's another part of the project that they want to do, is they want to put a 4x4 concrete pad for a personal watercraft lift mount in the northeast corner of the site, landward of the bulkhead along the Dug Lagoon. So if you have a picture of that, you see on the top part, they want to put a concrete pad so they can swing over a davit for a jet ski. Okay. And they're going to replace any piles or whalers in need of repair. Are going to be replaced in kind in place, no chemical treated lumber along the, they're going to touch up the entire bulkhead because it's got a few rotten spots in it and they want to fix that up. Just
Maintenance work.
Restore a couple of boards, everything. And as you noted that they had pulled out some vegetation, Spartina alterniflora in the front of the bulkhead. And as part of this whole plan, I required them to submit a revegetation plan. So they submitted a revegetation plan, replanting the tidal wetlands to the amount of 1,162 square feet.
Wow.
Is there Spartina all along in front of that bulkhead
No.
presently?
No, just that spot.
Could they replant the whole distance rather than just where they removed it?
Under what?
I don't know whether you can force them to do
rationale?
that. I mean, that's going a little bit above and beyond. This stuff is a patch of, it was just a patch right there, and they thought that they could remove it. So I'm making them replant that patch. But as far as holding them to additional standards, they're really not. They're just patching up the bulkhead here and there to go to that extent. I think is a little onerous. And besides, it's land that they don't own. It's our bottom. So,
I'm just thinking in terms of the opportunity to, I mean, Spartina is the nursery of our bays. So to get a little bit more.
If you're familiar with the piece of property there, the only piece that would support the Spartina is that particular little spot because it's bog that has been exposed. The other part is all sand, and it would just probably, with the wave wash back from the bulkhead, would probably blow it right out in one storm.
Okay.
Okay. So take a look at the rocks and see what you have to say. Okay. And anybody else wants to take a look at it. We'll table this till the next work session.
Okay, so we're gonna hold that, Eric?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, am I up? You finished?
Yeah, I'll finish with mine.
I've got the Town of Southampton project. Our friendly neighborhood highway superintendent, Alex Greger, is finally going to work on the Bay Avenue part that falls under his jurisdiction. I think it's a great thing. It will pick up from where the Parks Department put in their new bulkhead that was failing, and it'll take care of that section that James is showing you along the roadway that leads up to our pier project that we're currently going through the permitting process and engineering process on ourselves. But this will holistically take care of the whole area, which has been severely deteriorating. So he has an application before us right now for approval. He's hired a McLean to handle his paperwork, and it's been a long time coming. If you speak to the people that live down in that area and utilize that area as well, constantly being patched. People are always having a problem there. The kids like to go there crabbing and snapper fishing, and it's a heavily used area recreationally and commercially. And obviously we have plans to do the pier, and I just think it'll be good to get this done and behind us.
Yep. Needs it
really bad.
Yeah, it's all sloughing in and there's holes. The marine maintenance is constantly patching it up.
Parks
And,
Department has.
And the highway is too.
Yes, and
Yep.
the Parks Department is there. They have a dredge project going on there right now for the marine park. That is going on right now. There's a pile of dredge spoils over there on the parks facility, and it would be good for for Alex to get this done. I've been in discussion yesterday with the DEC and with Cashin, who's handling our portion of it. I was on the phone and emailing back and forth with them yesterday, answering questions. And, so we're moving forward. Board is aware for our portion, the pier portion, we have the bonds secured for that. We're paying the debt service on it. Initially, if you recall, we tried to do this as a unit in one shot when the parks did theirs, but, Alex wanted to wait till this point in time. And I think it's great that we're finally getting to go to the next step with this project. So I think we should, work with them on it and move it forward.
Yep. And of course, waive the application fee.
Yeah. Obviously, sister agency.
Right.
A long time coming.
Yep. Very good. Good project.
May I speak, please?
Sure.
Trustee Horowitz, Secretary Treasurer Horowitz indicated that this was time sensitive and should go on for the meeting on Monday. Is that still the case?
I would say.
I think so. I think we should, we should do it if it's possible, as I had indicated earlier, to help Alex Gregor, the highway superintendent, as best as we can to get this finally squared away. It's an important project for the community. And if the staff can find the time to get this resolution squared away, if you need some help, I'd be more than happy to help you. But I think it would be good for everybody if we could get this done sooner than later.
Okay, and that will be a special condition of the permit that we're waiving the application fee due to the fact that it is the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can put that on there. Absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll put that in the special condition, James. That's okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Mr. Pell.
Mr. Schultz, the next one I got is,
James McWinney. Right?
McWeeny. Just trying to get to the
Fresh Pond.
Fresh Pond, 231 Big Fresh Pond Road, James McWinney. This is to replace a dock and a float. I noticed a lot of the down there, they don't have floats. They have actually fixed platforms. I don't know how the board would feel to have them switch to a fixed platform or keep it as a float. And James, did he send a new cover sheet in for to have flow through?
Yes, he did.
Okay. All the deckings flow through.
he might be on the call.
Charles, is he on waiting to come in?
I believe Mr. Fischetti might be on the call. I'm not sure.
Coming in now.
Why
Hi,
were you,
Rob Fischetti. I'm Mr. McGuinney's attorney.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
yes,
Mhm.
I'm here to answer any questions.
So how does the board feel to as a float compared to fix?
talk a little bit about why you're suggesting that, please?
I saw most of the other docks in that area were all fixed, were not floats. The water pretty much stays the same in there. It raises with the rain. That's about it. There's no tide action in there. I have no problem staying with the float. I just, only reason I'm bringing it up because I saw a lot of other docks were all fixed.
Is the application for a float?
Yes, because it was a float there originally.
And it meets the Blue Book?
Yeah, it meets the Blue Book. There's in there, it's not like it's a closed pond, so the water goes up and down during the course of the rainstorms in the dry weather.
Right. I mean, I'm good with the float as it is. It's fine with me. Yeah.
Okay, and it's all flow through. So if you want to, we can advance that. And I presume he's going to clean up the area around that place.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's some broken chairs in the water and some other debris in the water.
Yes, he's gonna bring his attention to the whole piece of property there.
Okay, and also he should put a number on because it's kind of hard to find without a number on the front.
Oh, an address number. Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of no trespassing signs, but no numbers.
Okay, all right, no problem.
All right, thanks. I'd like to advance this then.
Thank you.
The board's fine with it?
Yep. Meets Blue Book.
Yeah. And the next
So
one is,
if I could ask just what is the next step then?
we have a meeting on Monday. We have a resolution to approve it.
Okay, great.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next one is 191 Shore Road. The owner is Patricia J. Penta.
I believe he's on the call.
Patrick?
And
Is he coming on? This is to replace 122 feet of linen of existing timber bulkhead with navy style vinyl with green hot tropical wood. Dredge probably 20 yards of sand from bottom from existing boat slip. Extended catwalk over existing 8-inch groin to access proposed float. The question I have on this, James, can you show the plan?
Yeah.
So you actually having 4 boat slips here. You're allowed two boats per property. So you have, the in here, and if they dredge this, then you can put a boat in there. Then you can put 1, 2.
I'm not sure. I can't see what you're pointing out. I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
How are you? Hello. Okay. So so dredge where it says, I actually just had this updated based on the DEC recommendation, the paperwork submitted to them, and we had done just yesterday. In fact, got back some updated drawings on this that I can email to you. But that area there, the boat basin is what we plan to dredge. I don't understand where you see 4 boat or room to dock 4 boats.
You could fit 2 boats in that slip and 2 on the dock.
I got you. I guess it's not very accessible to the left side because of the wetlands there. But I guess that would be somewhat feasible. It's really the boat basin, I think, is practical use is only for one boat.
How many boats do you intend to have here?
Well, I have a 22-foot boat that I planned on, hopefully, if I can get that dredged, put in the boat basin. And the float was really for the kayak use. The tide change can be pretty significant there. And right now I use the kayak. It's kind of like a beach almost on low tide in that boat basin. So I'll do the kayaking off of that. So the float was really just for better accessibility to any of the small craft like that, like a kayak or something of that nature.
I mean, you can leave the boat basin for like a wetland beach area and just put the dock in. and then you can launch your kayak from there.
Well, I'd like to utilize both. The boat basin is there already. I was hoping to be able to
Yeah.
just dredge that. That's all I needed to do was dredge that.
Yeah, because it's pretty tight in there with docks. That's the trouble, you know, you have the marina right across the way.
Well, what do you have as far as depth at the end of that dock that projects straight out? Not the L, but just straight out.
The soundings, there's one with the soundings, I believe, on it, right, on the survey. I have there's another survey. There's a project plan and a survey I think you have.
Okay.
Like supplement information for the, and that has the soundings on it. Yeah, there you are.
Yeah.
Tough to
It's like a
see.
ledge. It falls off pretty quick there.
$17 on the inside.
And at the end of the groin, there's 40 inches.
Mhm. But you wouldn't want to, Bill, you wouldn't want to just put a on the straight portion, just put a ramp on that and put a dock straight out. So he could, so that would limit it to 2 boats. You'd have the one on the inside and the one on the outside.
You
So
could do
I
that.
see what you're talking about. You got three possible access, 3 of them now.
Yeah. Just trying to be fair to other people, you know, who want.
Mhm.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you look at the aerial, I think you might see from the width of the boat basin there, the accessibility to that other side, especially with the grasslands that have been done, is not really accessible. But the reason why I didn't go just straight out and onto a float or even a fixed dock was just because of that distance between the Conscience Point Marina right across the way. You know, I don't want to.
It's tight.
Yeah, it's right where it kind of starts to tighten up.
Yeah, you have 90 feet.
Right.
Hmm.
So I didn't want to, you know, get too close to boats backing out, perhaps. Right now, if you looked at it, you know, I've looked at it a lot, and obviously, and you'd have a clear path. And the idea was to keep that channel open so that, you know, all the other boats up the channel heading to a North Sea harbor would have easy access.
Where is the channel actually located?
North Sea harbor, it's right across from Conscience Point.
It goes right down. Yeah, right down the middle.
Oh, okay.
It drops, like you said, drops right off there. It's like it goes from, you know, from 2 feet down to like 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm looking at the boat slip, am I seeing that it says wetland restoration area in there?
Yes, the updated one doesn't say that, actually, the wetland preservation area. I don't know why they had written that in the original survey, but it wasn't written in the prior survey. The wetland, I guess, preservation area is around it, the buffer.
Is there spartina in there now? Are there grasses that you can see?
No, I had submitted pictures. It's just sand.
Just sand.
It's kind of getting it from the tidal change. This is obviously an extreme high tide. There should be more pictures if you scroll down. There's one actually looking in the basin that you would ask me to send, Mr. Bell.
Yes, you call me Bill.
All right, Bill.
Yeah, because I want to be able to show the other board members that there was no grass growing in there.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And if you, from that picture too, you can see the accessibility from that far side is not, it's really just a barrier, you know.
Does this application meet Blue Book regulations?
Except for the number of boats you can put on the docks. That's the trouble, Scott.
Right, so but if he did it and only had 2 boats there, he would be in compliance, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So you would have to understand that if you have greater than 2 boats there, you're going to become if this was approved, you'd become then an enforcement issue.
Oh, no worries. That's understandable. Not a problem. Like I said, the boat basin to me is only usable if you really look at it from from the ground. The practical use is only for one boat. You're not going to be able to, I mean, I'd have to build some sort of, way around that grassland and so on. It's not my intention. My intention was just to utilize the existing boat basin and to get a float out front for the.
Because it's easy for the constables to drive by and see 3 vessels docked at a, at a location that's only supposed to have 2.
Believe you me, I'm not the kind of guy to push the limits there. I
Because you
own a
could
local business. And,
Yeah.
I'm always compliant. 13 years here.
Yeah, because you could actually put a boat here and a boat there.
He only has,
I can't see where you're pointing at.
he only has 17 inches at the inside of the float.
No, I mean along the pier going out from the boat slip.
Okay.
Yeah, I see what he's saying. Yeah, we don't want to see that. We're not looking to create these facilities. It's not the intent of the permitting of our docks.
No, I understand. I'm not looking to compete with a marina and rent out dock space, in all honesty. And I have no problem, agreeing to that in writing. That of course, there's a limit to the only 2 boats.
We can put that a covenant on the permit.
That's no problem.
And there's what section, sir, of Conscience Point Marina is your house right across from? The section where the larger boats are, or where the smaller boats are?
Not too sure, to be honest with you.
Those are
Right
large.
across from
The bathroom.
the bathrooms,
Where the bathrooms
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so some fairly large boats in there then,
Yeah.
along that stretch.
Yeah.
Because the smaller boats are out on the T-docks.
Yeah, one of the reasons they put these boat slips in because it was so tight coming in and out of there, so the boats would be in the slips, not like the same way they do in Quag Canal.
Right.
That's why they put in some of those places where, like your property comes out like almost to a point where it bends. That's why they put a boat slip in there years ago. Can you go back to the James? Can you go back to the picture over the overhead shot? See, so you're right at a point.
Oh yeah, no, I'm aware. It's just looking like, my neighbors have some similar scenarios, as you can see, too. 2 doors down, they have the sailboat in the boat basin and the float out front. There's several of them as you go down that canal.
Yeah.
Very similar situation. And
Yeah,
that was my biggest concern, of course, like yours, is the narrowness there. But when we did the measurements, it seemed to comply with all the regulations of no more than 1/3.
So if the board's fine with it, we can go on to the next step on it.
Okay, if you're okay, Bill.
Yeah, as long as there's a cover on only 2 boats.
Okay.
James, are you going to help me write the covenant for the special conditions?
It's standard language that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to
be honest with you, I thought it was code anyway. Is that not correct?
It's in our blue book.
Right,
Yeah.
I think so. I think it was just the code, which I was aware of just through this process. Well, thank you. Thank you. For your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we're advancing that, Bill?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll
Okay.
be on for the December 2nd meeting. December 7.
Okay. Hey, Scott, can you take over for a couple of minutes? I have to talk to the supervisor.
Right ahead.
Okay, you're right there.
All right, so I think we're gonna go to Trustee Welker.
Thank you. This is application for John D. Idle, 411 Rose Hill Road. Charles Bowman of Land Use Ecological Services may be on the call, Charles, if you want to step on.
Yeah.
This is for installation of stones, 1 to 500 pound stones on filter fabric along the toe of the eroded bluff, with backfilling and planting of native species. We had, after looking at after a site visit, we had requested due to the low wave action in this area and not that great of a fetch, if perhaps Mr. Bowman would consider something more green rather than these large boulders, perhaps biologs or perhaps just planting. I think there's some pictures, James, maybe if you want to show those. Chuck, are you on the call?
I am. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Hey, hello.
How are
Do
you
you wanna-
guys doing today? I was on the Fisher call too. It just said you just wouldn't let me in, but
Oh.
that's fine. If I could just give you my 2 cents here. You can see in the lower corner, there are some of the similar sized rocks that are scattered on the south side of the dock there. And I don't know when they were put in. They need to kind of be reset. They're just kind of scattered. But in this area, it certainly does get erosion because it gets scarped out continuously. That's why the owner had asked us to do this. I do not recommend coir logs. I've never had any success with coir logs. They do degrade eventually, and what we're looking to do here is basically at the high water mark, and it's Mecox, so that's kind of an arbitrary line, but to just put a little wave break in of small rocks, 100 to 500 pound stone, or maybe 1 foot by 1 foot up to 2 foot by 2 foot, maybe in that range. And just to have a little wave break that then will allow us to have some revegetation, because under the, if you look at that mile a minute weed and what has come over the bluff, it's a scarp. So in the winter, it all dies back, and then you get a vertical scarp. We had originally thought about regrading it, but to get the equipment in to do that, and then you still need the toe protection. This seemed to be the most unobtrusive way to go about it, and to reset the ones that are on the south side of the dock, just so they're in a single row. It's not going to create any reflection of wave energy, and at the most it'll just catch some sediment on the back side of it, and hopefully be able to then allow that bluff or that scarp face to slough off and just revegetate naturally. So I mean, that was our hope and our plan, and I still think it's a good one.
So when we looked back through the layers of GIS through the different years, it looked as if this bluff prior to Sandy had been quite heavily vegetated and stable. And then after Sandy, we noticed that there was a fair amount of erosion, but then in the subsequent years, we did not see that there had been erosion. So that's why noticing.
I certainly would agree with that. Any of these erosive factors, don't occur annually. Depends on the winter, depends on which way the storms come. But I think all this owner was trying to do is really keep vegetation there and to revegetate it. So, I mean, he's not asking, and we certainly don't recommend any really significant structures. It's just a little, really a wave break, if you will, a little toe protection that's going to trap sediment. You can see those rocks that are on the south side that actually are serving pretty well, except they're scattered. They have to be reset. I don't know who or when they ever put them in. Behind them, it's fine. And also, I think you get some reflection off the dock structure that might cause a bit of the erosion on it. And if you peer under that, the herbaceous vegetation on the scarp, you'll see that there is a vertical scarp, underneath it. So, again, I think this is very benign and like I say, core logs, they do fine if you're on a pond or a very low energy environment. But mecox, it can be very low energy. It can also be high energy. So
Well, to that point, there are some rocks that have been placed in various areas on mecox, but they're all in the open bay, not in Hayground Cove. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that with the installation of the core logs, that there are native species that are installed within those logs, and then when the logs disintegrate, it allows for the revegetation of those plants.
I believe it, and believe me, I was one of the first people on Long Island 30 years ago to use core logs and to try them. So I certainly have had my experiences, plus and minuses with them. They work in an appropriate place. I think mostly they work on the upper reaches of creeks where there's very low chance of any wave energy. And here, obviously there is a chance of wave energy. There has been erosion depending on which way the storms come. So, when you say that there's no fetch, there is a fetch depending on which way that the storms and the wind is coming and at what level the Mecox Bay is at the time. So, and again, if you're talking about a rock that is, 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet, it is not really a structure in my mind anyway. All it's going to do is allow that sediment to accumulate behind it and provide just a little wave break for those occasional storms. And he still may get erosion, and I've told the owner that. But he doesn't want a structure either. He likes the more of a natural shoreline. I just don't think core logs are going to work there, and it might work for a year. Then we might get one good storm in the right direction. They're all gonna disappear.
Inexpensive experiment and a failed project, and then perhaps more environmental damage.
One of the other things with core logs is, and Ann is correct, to plant the right species, in them. But mecox is a weird environment as far as what native species are going to work in the intertidal, if you even call it an intertidal zone, in the water zone, I guess you'd call it, and I'm hoping actually that if we do this, that we actually get some Phragmites, which does better, and to hold that bluff in place, because that's probably what used to be there on the bluff.
What do you think, board? Dan?
Does anybody else have any thoughts? Eric, Bill?
I think I kind of agree with him that you better off with the rocks there.
And again, they're 1.5 feet, just a single row. And the ones on the outside,
because you can see by where the rocks are, you got plants right behind them.
So you diffuse some of
you guys know I'm a proponent of vegetation. I really am.
That's true.
So I'm not trying to sell rocks, believe me. But I'd like to be able to have the plants grow, and even if it is frag that grows behind it, great. It stabilizes the bluff in this case, and it'll keep it from eroding. It'll make the upland owner happy, and everybody will just go on.
What do you think, Ann?
So if you were to install these rocks, remind me what is going to go just landward of them then? Can you replant? Can you re-veg there with native species rather than
I was hoping it's going to just, because there is some vegetation still there, as you can see. Once we put it in there, he's more than willing to plant the bluff, the scarp area. And I certainly can, ask him to do that, and we can give you a list of what we would plant there. Quite frankly, I think it's going to be more of what's already in this whole shoreline, which is, frag and mile a minute weed and other things, which is fine. It's still going to stabilize it. You're not going to get it.
Wouldn't it be better to have something to replace the mile a minute weed?
Oh, sure it would. I'm just saying that's what's there. It's going to come in. I wouldn't be planting it, Scott. Wouldn't be planting it. It's just.
I mean, is there something maybe that you can replace some native species that you think may thrive there?
We can absolutely, sure, yes, we certainly can.
In
What do you think of that?
In Swans Creek, a couple coves over, I know that the native hibiscus are coming back where the frag have been cut. So if you could.
Well, the marshmallow hibiscus palustris, they're great. And plus it's beautiful. Homeowners love it. But it's more of a shrub than a herbaceous, ground cover. And certainly some of those can be planted. But yeah, that's one of the things that we always recommend because the homeowners actually love it. It's a beautiful flower, Most things that grow on shorelines and marshes don't have very nice flowers on it.
So what are you thinking?
If there could be re-veg in addition to the boulders, that would certainly.
I'd be more than happy.
Make it a little greener.
I'd be more than happy to include that in. Not a problem.
So Chuck, you want to hold this over till the next one till you come
hold it
in?
Over and I'll put together a little planting plan to go along with it and send you an amended plan.
Give you a little time to kind of survey it and see what's going to thrive there and really work for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, not a problem.
Thanks, Chuck.
Okay.
So,
well, thank you, Anna. Appreciate your
Lisa, if we could hold this, please.
Yes, thank you, Ann. I appreciate that.
Okay. My second one.
Okay, see you guys.
Thank you.
Take care, Chuck. My second one is 117 Cobb Isle Road, 117 Cobb Isle Road LLC. Is anyone from InterScience on to represent this? Jim Walker, are you on? This is a proposed 4x8. You hear, Jim? Proposed.
Nobody there from InterScience?
No.
Okay. This is a proposed 4x8 low profile fixed pier catwalk with a 4x14 ramp down to a 6x20 floating dock and a 4x8 kayak rack. There are three tie-off poles, and all construction would be untreated material.
You mean the Blue Book, Ann?
Sorry?
All Blue Book compliant?
Yes. This is on Mecox Bay, the open bay. This is a new house with an existing bulkhead that, or a renovation to a house with an existing bulkhead, and this would be added to. I was at the property and it looks fine to me. Does anybody have any questions?
What material are they using on the catwalk?
James, can you help me with that? You may be able to get.
It just says untreated material. They're using like penetrative decking?
Hold on, let's see.
It just says untreated material, so.
Maybe we have to flesh that out a bit with them.
Yeah, I think it was just untreated wood.
You're comfortable with that, or do you think this is an area that needs a light penetrative benefit for the catwalk?
This
Well,
is a,
it's all over water. It's not over marshland.
Okay.
So unless there's, I mean, there's no eelgrass in Mecox Bay, so I wouldn't worry about the you know, if there's any eelgrass under there. But you know, it's up to you guys if you want to have them add the light penetrating decking.
I'm asking Ann. It's her application. I want her to be comfortable with her application.
we could ask that because it certainly has been done in other catwalks on Mecox. So that's fine.
I mean, I'm just saying, if you know, it's a consideration. I'm not, you know, if you're comfortable with the untreated material, then that's fine, since it does meet Blue Book. But if you think it's an area that's sensitive, that needs that other material, then, you know, feel free to make the consideration. It's up to you.
James, what do you think?
I think it might be a good idea just because it's a low profile. So if there is any aquatic vegetation under there, then
okay,
you know, it could be helpful for it.
Okay. So
and then it would also be helpful for them because if you get a storm, then the planks won't pop off. The light penetrating decking allows the water to go through, so it might be beneficial for them. And I don't know if Jim Walker from Inner Science has an issue with it or not. So you might want to just run it by him. But
I was going to make that point gently as well, because, you know, we just had that line of storms that came through here the other night, and there was a substantial surge, obviously, in areas out in, you know, my area, Shinnecock Bay and east and west, and areas where they were capping with the new style bulkheads. A good chunk of that capping got just pushed right off, where I think the light penetrative stuff allowed for the relief of the pressure.
It's only 4 foot by 8 foot area that you would put that in. The ramp, you know, the ramp and the float wouldn't be light penetrating decking. So you're really only looking at the 4 by 8 fixed pier up here. So you know, it doesn't make that much of a difference. You know, it's
it's your call.
Either way.
Okay.
Your call.
So James, that's a good point. So it's 30, and Scott, I hear what you're saying too, but it's 32 square feet basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be more concerned if it was a really long catwalk that was 50 feet long. You know, then I would have more. You know, but
I think I'm okay in this situation with it as it is. But Scott, that's good to know going forward. That that observation. That the light penetrating did hold up better.
I mean, we used it, you know, that Baycrest project that we did, we used it on the capping, and we used it on our catwalk there as well for the, you know, for all the obvious reasons. So that's all. But if you're good with this, then and you feel it meets Blue Book, then I'm okay with you advancing. I don't know where Bill is.
Is it just the two of us? We can't advance it.
You there, Bill?
Charles,
Bill is muted.
Yeah. It's okay to advance. You good with advancing that? It beats Blue Book.
Do you have any questions, Bill?
I'd rather see it have the flow through, because we made other people do it, even if it's a small spot.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so Lisa, we'll hold this then.
Okay.
And we'll ask Jim to do the catwalk portion of it in flow through.
All right. Does anybody have anything else? I do know that we're scheduled for well, I guess we're running late now, huh? We have an executive session for the purposes of discussing litigation. So I think if nobody has anything further, it probably is a good idea to adjourn this meeting and go into executive session if nobody has any objections to that. You good with that? Okay, so then I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting, and we're going to go on our bridge telephone call for executive session for the purposes of discussing litigation. Is there a second?
Okay. Second.
Lisa, did you want to say something?
Yes, please, if I may. I do have a personnel matter that I need to discuss with the board in executive session.
All right, so now we're switching from executive session for the purpose of discussing litigation to litigation and personnel matters.
Yes.
I made the motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,
Okay,
and
meeting adjourned.
Eric is out of